Iran has launched UAVs towards the Strait of Hormuz every night since the agreement on signing the memorandum of understanding. 2 days before the signing, Iranian tankers are already passing through Hormuz. And in Israel, we already know and we are preparing. The agreement between Iran and the United States will not hold. It is a ticking time bomb that could explode at any moment. Is Trump against Netanyahu? The relationship between the United States and the Prime Minister of Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, continues to show signs of public tension. From close allies to public attacks, the relationship between the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Israel now faces a significant test as the arrangement process with Iran enters a decisive stage. We will bring you all the details very soon, and the condition of the Tehran-Beirut axis. The nuclear agreement with the United States depends on an Israeli withdrawal from Lebanon. The Hezbollah terrorist organization is running to hide under the robe of the Ayatollah regime in Iran like cowards. Hezbollah declared this morning that Iran promised not to sign a final nuclear agreement with an Israeli withdrawal from Lebanon. And this is while the Hezbollah terrorist organization itself admits that it broke the ceasefire and that it is still launching attacks towards the north. In Hezbollah, they make clear that they have no intention of obeying the ceasefire that is imposed by the United States President Donald Trump, and that they will continue launching attacks towards northern Israel. And will the Syrian army act against Hezbollah? In Syria, they are convinced that the American landlord has gone crazy. So, can Iran really force Israel to stop fighting? I'm Yair Pinto. With me is Mati Shoshani. We're here on Boots on the Ground. We bring you the whole truth about what's happening in Israel and also the whole truth about what's happening in our neighborhood, the Middle East. And today is June 17th. So let's begin. Because despite the memorandum of understanding between Washington and Tehran, the Revolutionary Guards continue launching UAVs towards ships in the Strait of Hormuz. An official American source said that since the electronic signing of the memorandum of understanding, multiple UAV launchers have been carried out every night towards shipping routes in the area. The activity continues constantly and is raising concerns amongst the American security officials that are operating in this region. According to the report, American forces deployed in the area are succeeding in intercepting the aircrafts before they pose a real threat to commercial vessels, to military ships, and to crew members in the area of the Strait of Hormuz. And forces familiar with the details noted that the defense and the surveillance systems of the United States military are operating continuously in order to prevent harm to the freedom of navigation in one of the most important trade routes in this world. I want to help you understand what this morning looks like from our small country, Israel. Even today, in Israel, we still do not know what the agreement with Iran really looks like. It's not clear what the interpretations of the sides are. And it's not clear whether this agreement holds water at all. Because right now, in the IDF, they understand one thing. Israel will not withdraw from Lebanon. In the Northern Command, they're talking about a critical security zone, 10 kilometers deep inside Lebanon, an area that the IDF already holds today. In the IDF, they estimate that it is only a matter of time, days, weeks, maybe a little more, until this whole story blows up in the Americans' face. The question is now how it will blow up and at what intensity. And here in Israel, we do not know what the agreement looks like. And they continue to build a target bank for the case of re-escalation and a return to fighting. So the Israeli forecast for the region is not optimistic. In the IDF, they continue to operate and to prepare for the next round of fighting against Iran. The target bank in Iran and across the Middle East is being built. In the IDF, they say that the moment the political echelon gives the green light, the planes will take off. In the Strait of Hormuz, the first movement has already been recorded. Tankers carrying Iranian oil left the American blockade. A maritime tracking website reported this today. And this is happening only 2 days before Washington and Tehran are supposed to begin talks on the peace agreement that was agreed between them, an agreement that is still full of holes, that has clauses that will require a great deal of interpretation. According to the draft memorandum of understanding that was revealed by Bloomberg, the United States and Iran will begin 60 days of negotiations towards a final agreement. The war will stop. The naval blockade will be removed. Sanctions will be eased. And Tehran will commit not to produce nuclear weapons. And Trump, like Trump, understands very well the power of a television moment. After his 80th birthday celebrations, with a major show at the White House and the salute flyover by the United States Air Force, he's already moving on to the next production, which is a major diplomatic ceremony, this time on European soil. Tomorrow, on Friday, Trump is expected to present himself as the messenger of peace, the man who closes walls, opens shipping lanes, and brings the sides to the table. At his side may stand the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, not exactly a symbol of diplomatic softness, but a senior figure from the heart of the Iranian regime. Alongside them will also be senior officials from the Pakistani government, perhaps in the role of the diplomatic groomsmen of this event, and several European heads of state who will want to appear close to this historic moment. In other words, even before there is a final agreement, there is already a stage. Even before all the details are closed, there is already a picture. And the big question is whether behind this impressive production stands a real agreement or another memorandum of understanding that looks good on paper and leaves the truly hard questions for the day after. At the grand ceremony, Trump will promise again and again that Iran will not have nuclear weapons, that he is the best president that America has ever had, and Israel as well, and that he, and only he, saved Israel from the Iranian threat. And then the memorandum will be signed. According to the draft memorandum of understanding that was leaked through El Arabiya and also revealed by Bloomberg, this is the structure of the emerging deal between the Iranian regime and the United States of America. One, immediate end to the war. That's the first thing. The moment the memorandum is signed, the war is supposed to end on all fronts, including in Lebanon. 2, stopping all hostile actions. Both sides commit not to attack, not to threaten, and not to use force against each other. And 3, respect for sovereignty. Iran and the United States commit to respect each other's territory and not to interfere in the internal affairs of the other side. 4, a final agreement within 60 days. The memorandum is only the first stage. Within up to 60 days, the sides are supposed to reach a full agreement with the possibility of an extension by consent. And 5, removing the naval blockade on Iran. The United States will remove the blockade, allow the return of ship movement, and later also withdraw forces from areas around Iran. And 6, opening the shipping lanes in the Gulf. Iran commits to restoring the movement of merchant ships from the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman. And this is including removing obstacles and neutralizing mines. And 7, a massive reconstruction program for Iran. The United States and regional partners will formulate an economic development and reconstruction program for Iran at a scale of at least $300 billion. And 8, an Iranian commitment not to produce nuclear weapons. Iran again declares that it will never produce nuclear weapons, but the fate of the enriched uranium and the other nuclear issues will be postponed to the final agreement. 9. Freezing the situation until the final agreement. Iran will not change the status of its nuclear program, and the United States will not impose new sanctions and will not reinforce forces in this region. 10. Exemptions for Iranian oil exports. Washington will allow Iran to renew the exports of oil, petrochemical products, and related services, including banking, insurance, and transportation. 11. Releasing frozen funds. Iranian assets and funds that were frozen or restricted are supposed to be released gradually and become fully available for Tehran's use. 12. A supervision mechanism that will be established to supervise the implementation of the agreement and the compliance of both sides with their commitments. 13. The final negotiations will begin only after guarantees. Iran and the United States will enter the final talks only after Iran receives guarantees that the central clauses removing the blockade, opening shipping, all exemptions, and releasing the funds are indeed beginning to be implemented. 14th, approval in the Security Council. The final agreement is supposed to receive force through a binding resolution of the United Nations Security Council. In other words, in simple language, first a ceasefire, then money, oil and shipping lanes, and then, only then, an attempt to close a final agreement on the nuclear issue and the rest of the disputes. Here in Israel, we are now trying to understand not only what is written in this agreement, but also what it means for Israel and for our freedom of action from now on. In Jerusalem, they admit that they still have not received the full text of this agreement, even though they asked for it. And that's exactly what worries the political echelon here. Because if Washington and Tehran are moving towards a broad agreement, which also includes Lebanon, removal of the blockade, economic relief, and a nuclear status quo, where does that leave Israel? That does not mean that Trump suddenly turned against the Jewish state of Israel. It does mean that there is a clear clash of interests going on here. Trump wants to reach an agreement, present an end to this war, open the shipping lanes, and guarantee, at least on paper, that Iran will not produce nuclear weapons. Israel, on the other hand, looks at the same draft and asks a completely different question. What happens the day after? What about the enriched uranium? What about Hezbollah? And what if Iran is simply buying time? The tension erupted when Trump criticized Israel and Netanyahu regarding Lebanon. He said that Israel has been fighting Hezbollah for too long, that the strikes are excessive, and that Netanyahu needs to be more responsible. From Jerusalem's perspective, this is not only a political statement, it is a signal. If Lebanon enters the framework of this understanding, Israel may find itself required to explain every strike, even when it identifies a real threat across the border. Netanyahu and his party is trying to project that the main issue remains the same. Iran must not reach nuclear weapons, and Israel must retain freedom of action against its terror proxies. But behind the scenes, in Jerusalem, we understand that the Americans are now leading a move, and the Israelis are not necessarily in the room where all the details are being closed and discussed. So this is not necessarily a drama of Trump versus Bibi. It's a deeper drama. Trump wants a big agreement. Israel wants security, certainty. And in the middle stands Iran, a regime that has already proven that it knows how to sign, gain time, receive money, and continue building power to Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, and Syria. By the way, it seems that Syria opposes the American initiative and announces that Syria will not act against Hezbollah out of fear that it will be perceived as supporting Israel. And in Iran, the Revolutionary Guards are taking control of the negotiations with the United States and setting a hard line against the negotiating team. Negotiations between Iran and the United States have sparked major dramas inside the Iranian regime. According to our sources, during the talks held by Abbas Araghchi and Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf with the mediators from Qatar and Pakistan in recent days, every proposal and every clause returned for approval by Ahmad Vahidi and the senior Revolutionary Guards officials, who in practice dictated the regime's position. According to those same sources, their line was clear: you are too soft. You gave the Americans too much. And from there came the unequivocal demand from the Revolutionary Guards: no concession will be made before the money is actually received. And after the Hezbollah terrorist organization feels the sword of the IDF on its neck, it is running to ask for help from Iran, which has returned to threaten Israel. The Iranian Emergency Command, Qatam al-Anbiya, claims that the IDF violated the ceasefire in Lebanon 84 times in the last 2 days and warns, if the activity does not stop, we will respond with severe force. In the terrorist organization, they admit that the memorandum of understanding that was reached between the United States and Iran will not currently lead to an Israeli withdrawal from southern Lebanon, but they claim that they received a guarantee from Tehran that this will be one of its demands in the future negotiations. Their message is clear: there will be no nuclear agreement with the United States if Israel does not withdraw. The meaning? Another Lebanese report is saying that another UAV attack took place. And today, we will also bring you a situation assessment that was thwarted at the White House. An assassination that almost took place inside Washington. The investigation documents in the case of the attempted attack at the White House reveal meticulous planning that included explosive drones, sniper positions, and another wave of attacks by gunmen. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is also amongst the names that came up as possible targets. All the details coming soon. I'm Yair Pinto. With me is Mati Shoshani. We are here on Boots on the Ground. We bring you the whole truth about what's happening in Israel and about this war against the Revolutionary Guards in Iran, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. And 1 second before we begin, I want to call on you to keep spreading the truth. Share our content with as many people as possible. Click on the subscribe button. Most importantly, do not forget to look for me, Yair Pinto, and for Mati Shoshani on our social media accounts in order to get the view through our eyes of what it's like to live in Israel in this war. The ceasefire with Iran may be in place, but no one in Israel really believes that this is over. The missiles may have stopped for now, but the injuries, the trauma, and the need to stay ready, that hasn't gone anywhere. And through all of this, who was there from the very first moment? The life-saving first responders of Magen David Adom. When the sirens went off, when the rockets fell and exploded, their teams were already on the ground, treating the wounded, evacuating the injured, saving lives again and again. And now, even as things quiet down, they don't stop. They're restocking. They're repairing the ambulances, retraining the teams, getting ready for whatever comes next, because they know that it will come. But to stay ready, they need support. So if you want to make a real difference in the land of Israel, you can go to savelifeisrael.com. Again, that's savelifeisrael.com. Help Magen David Adom stay prepared, strong, and fast so that they can keep saving lives whatever happens next. Visit savelifeisrael.com. And let's get back to the news. The IDF struck additional targets this morning in southern Lebanon, while the world is already preparing for the signing ceremony in Switzerland. The strikes focused on several areas in the south of the country, and after days of fire, explosive drones, Hezbollah attempts to hit our forces, and direct threats from Tehran. Hezbollah, meanwhile, is trying to project restraint outwardly but on the ground, the campaign has not really stopped. And now the question is sharper than it was this morning. Has Lebanon become a hidden clause in the nuclear agreement with Iran? Because this is no longer only a debate over a ceasefire. It is a debate over who decides where Israel is allowed to operate, against whom Israel is allowed to operate, and when the Hezbollah threat turns from an Israeli security problem into an Iranian bargaining chip. Hezbollah now claims that Iran gave it a clear guarantee. There will be no final nuclear agreement with the United States without an Israeli withdrawal from southern Lebanon. It is important to notice this wording. Hezbollah itself admits that the current memorandum does not bring an immediate withdrawal, but it claims that this will be one of Iran's demands in the next round of negotiations. In other words, Tehran is trying to take the IDF presence in southern Lebanon, turn it into a clause in the nuclear talks, and then use Hezbollah to pressure Washington and Jerusalem. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said that almost without hiding it. From Iran's perspective, the war cannot be treated as if it has fully ended. As long as Israeli forces have not withdrawn from the areas that are captured in the latest war. He also claimed that the declaration ending the war includes all fronts, including Lebanon. That's exactly the point that worries us in Israel, because if the agreement with Iran includes Lebanon, who guarantees that it will not limit the IDF's freedom of action against the Hezbollah terrorist organization? And if it does not include Lebanon, why are Tehran, Hezbollah, and parts of the international system acting as if it does? At the same time, the text of the 14-clause draft memorandum of understanding has been published. The text has still not been officially published by Washington, and Iran is already claiming that parts of the reports are inaccurate. But even if this is only a draft, the direction is very clear. The first clause speaks about an immediate and permanent end to the war on all fronts, including Lebanon, not only Iran, not only the Strait of Hormuz, Lebanon as well. Once such a clause enters a document, Hezbollah receives a gift. It can claim that every Israeli strike in southern Lebanon is a violation of a broader agreement. The third clause gives the framework 60 days for final negotiations. That sounds short, but in the Middle East, 60 days is an eternity. And during that time, money can be moved, ships can return, smuggling routes can be restored, materials can be hidden, and Iran can test how far the Americans are willing to go to keep the agreement alive. Clauses 4 and 5 deal with lifting the naval blockade and renewing the maritime traffic. The United States is supposed to lift the naval blockade, and Iran is supposed to restore the merchant vessel traffic from the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman within 30 days, while removing technical obstacles and neutralizing sea mines. On paper, this sounds like reopening a trade route. In practice, it teaches us about Iran's new bargaining power. After months in which Hormuz became a global pressure tool, Tehran receives recognition that the opening passes through it. Not only through the American Navy, not only through the shipping companies, through Tehran. And then comes the economic clauses. Clause 6 speaks about the economic reconstruction and the development plan for Iran, worth at least $300 billion. Supporters of the Trump administration say this is not an immediate grant, but a future framework that will be activated only after a final agreement. But the very number changes the conversation. Iran is no longer presented only as an aggressive state that must be restrained. It is also presented as a country that must be rebuilt. Clause 10 is even more significant. Immediately after the signing of the memorandum, the United States Treasury is supposed to issue waivers for the export of Iranian crude oil, petrochemical products, and related services, like banking, insurance, transportation, and everything that allows oil to become money. This is not a side detail. It is oxygen for this regime. If Iran receives the ability to sell oil before a final nuclear agreement and before the enriched materials leaves its country, then the order of operations is reversed. First, relief, then concession. First, money, then monitoring. First, maritime traffic, then nuclear questions. Clause 11 speaks about releasing the frozen Iranian assets and the funds. According to reports, this involves tens of billions of dollars that are spread across China, Iraq, India, South Korea, Qatar, Japan, Luxembourg, the United States, and Oman. Some of the assets are connected to old oil sales, and some have been frozen for years. The numbers vary from country to country, but the picture is clear. Iran is sitting on money it wants to unlock. If the memorandum creates a path to unfreeze it, even gradually, then the Revolutionary Guards will receive not only time, but also economic fuel. Here, we need to stop for just a moment and look at Clause 13, because according to the draft, negotiations on the final agreement will begin after guarantees are received for the start of implementation of the key clauses, lifting the blockade, opening maritime traffic, oil waivers, and releasing the funds. This is practically a dangerous clause because, from Israel's point of view, it means that Iran does not enter the next stage empty-handed. It enters after the system has already begun releasing its economic levers, giving it money. And if you want to understand what's really happening here in Israel, across the Middle East, make sure to follow TBN Israel. Hit the like button, leave a comment, let me know where you're watching from, and keep praying for the situation because you don't want to miss any step of what's happening here. And now we return to Lebanon because that is where this agreement meets what's happening on the ground. Hezbollah Secretary General Naim Qassem published a message of thanks to the Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf. He thanked him for his position towards Lebanon, the Lebanese people, and the resistance, and claimed that Iran turned the hope of toppling Israeli operation into a reality. This is not a normal diplomatic text. It is a declaration of loyalty. Hezbollah is telling the Lebanese public, the one who protected us against Israel is Iran. The one who inserted Lebanon into this agreement is Iran. The one who holds the keys to the next stage is Iran. For the Lebanese government, this is a dangerous moment. The Lebanese state is trying to restore its standing, talk about disarming Hezbollah, and show that it has sovereignty. But Hezbollah is using the agreement to say the exact opposite. Beirut does not decide. Tehran decides. Washington also understands that Lebanon has become the focal point. Trump criticized Israel over the strike in the Dakhia neighborhood in Beirut and said that he did not like a strike that came hours before the signing, and argued that Israel needs to act with much greater responsibility. He also said that Israel has been fighting Hezbollah for too long now. Then came the strangest American proposal, to let Syria under Ahmed al-Sharaa deal with Hezbollah. In Israel, that idea was received almost with shock. Lebanon was not enthusiastic either. Syrian sources explain that al-Sharaa does not want to be seen as someone entering Lebanon in order to protect Israel. He is also not expected to act militarily against Hezbollah as long as Israel does not respond to Syria's demands. First and foremost, a withdrawal from the areas that the IDF seized in southern Syria after the fall of Assad. According to assessments, what Syria can do is something more limited. Secure the border with Lebanon more effectively and try to foil smuggling attempts by Iran. That's important because smuggling from Iran through Iraq and through Syria into Lebanon is one of the central routes for rebuilding Hezbollah. But from there to a Syrian army entering a direct confrontation with Hezbollah in Lebanon, the distance is enormous. Anyone who knows the region understands this. This is not a magic solution. It is more like a match next to an explosive material. Inside Israel's security establishment, the professional line is much sharper. The chief of staff presented 3 ironical conditions to the cabinet: a permanent buffer zone, full operational freedom of action, and the complete disarmament of Hezbollah. These are not slogans. These are conditions that come from the ground. Without a buffer zone, Hezbollah returns to the contact line. Without freedom of action, every launcher becomes protected. And without disarmament, the agreement only gives the organization time to breathe, rearm, and prepare for the next round. And over the past day, several Israeli strikes were recorded against vehicles, motorcycles, terrorists, and Hezbollah infrastructure. Some of the operations were in southern Lebanon, and some deeper in, even in areas north of the Litani River. On the other side, Hezbollah continues to fire rockets and mortar shells towards our forces. One active launcher was destroyed. That's why talk of quiet is misleading. There's no quiet here. There is uncertainty. There's a major difference between a ceasefire and a situation in which each side is testing how far it can go without bringing down the entire framework. And now Hormuz adds another layer. According to reports in the United States, Iran continued launching drones towards vessels in the Strait of Hormuz every night since the signing of the memorandum of understanding. And American officials said that all the drones were intercepted before becoming a threat to commercial ships, to military vessels, or to crew members. If this is true, it is an astonishing detail, because while Iran talks about opening the shipping lanes, it is continuing to test the defensive systems all around it. It's not closing Hormuz loudly. It is testing it at a low pressure, night after night. That's exactly how the Revolutionary Guard operate, not always with a major opening blow, sometimes through erosion, another drone, another threat, another ship that becomes cautious, another insurance company raising the prices, another captain deciding to wait. And the agreement, instead of dismantling this lever, may end up recognizing it. In the background, G7 leaders welcomed the understandings, emphasized the importance of free passage through Hormuz, and called for a stable ceasefire in Lebanon that will allow the Lebanese government to advance Hezbollah's disarmament. That sounds right, but the question is how to get there when Hezbollah itself claims that Iran promised that there will be no nuclear agreement without an Israeli withdrawal. And inside Iran, the picture is not simpler either. Some present the agreement as a victory. Some regime supporters are angry over the very compromise with the enemy. And there are Iranian citizens who hate the regime and feel that the world has simply gone back to doing business with it. In southern Iran, there are reports of residents standing in line for water after damage to infrastructure under heavy heat. In Tehran, regime opponents say that the agreement does not bring them freedom, but only returns them to life under the same system. From their perspective, the war may stop from the outside, but repression from the inside continues. And that is an important point. Trump may want to present an agreement that lowers oil prices, opens Hormuz, and distances the nuclear threat. Iran wants to present an achievement of standing firm against the Americans and against Israel. Hezbollah wants to present a victory in Lebanon, but the people living under the Iranian regime know that the deal with Tehran does not necessarily change Tehran. Israel does not have the luxury of settling for headlines. If the memorandum truly includes Lebanon, Israel must ensure that it does not limit Israel against Hezbollah, and it does not include Lebanon. Washington must say so clearly. We need to know. And if Iran receives oil assets, Hormuz, and 60 days of time before real nuclear monitoring, then this is not only a bad deal. It is a deal that teaches Tehran that threats pay. In the end, we need to look at three places: southern Lebanon, the Strait of Hormuz, and the room where the enriched material will be discussed. If in all three Iran keeps leverage for itself, then the agreement does not close this war. It only rearranges it. The question is whether the world will understand in time that the problem is not signing in Switzerland, but what happens the morning after, when Hezbollah is still armed, when Hormuz is still threatened, and the Iranian nuclear program is still waiting for the next stage. So keep spreading the truth, follow us, and most importantly, do not forget to click the subscribe button so that you stay tuned to the truth in real time and never miss any boots on the ground updates. Keep looking for us, Yair, Pinto, and Mati Shoshani on our social media accounts to see Israel through our eyes. And the best thing that you can do is unite in prayer. Let's pray really for wisdom to our leaders, for the people of the northern communities to have real security, not to be feeling like they're left against all these terrorists. Pray for the IDF soldiers. Pray for the Iranian people. They need our prayers now, for real. Keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem. Remember, this is a spiritual war, and we should pray. We'll see you again tomorrow.